So tonight's episode of Watchmen focuses on Looking Glass, aka Wade. We find out more about Adrienne's location, and the show recreates one of the biggest moments from the comics. We're going to talk about that and much more. Episode 5 of Watchmen was titled Little Fear of Lightning. The origin story of Looking Glass is revealed, as is the truth behind the greatest hoax in American history. The smartest man in the world plots a daring escape. Hey everybody, Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, review of the latest episode of Watchmen. And we got some stuff to talk about tonight. But before we dive into this review here, definitely consider subscribing to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of my reviews here on this channel. And if and when you've seen this episode of Watchmen, I need to know what you're thinking. I love interacting with you all in the comments, so let's have some fun dialogue down there. So, as I've been doing with all my reviews for this season so far, this is a spoiler discussion. So if you haven't seen the episode, go check it out, come back, and let's talk about it. So, boy, this was probably my favorite episode. And as you, for all those that have been watching all my previous reviews, you know I've been loving this season so far from episode 1 through 4. And tonight was so great because Tim Blake Nelson has been sprinkled in the season as Looking Glass, but this heavily focused on him, his origins, his backstory, why he does what he does, his relationships, and so on and so forth. And we're going to talk about it all right now. So the episode starts off with a flashback in the 80s. We see a young Wade who's in New Jersey in the Jehovah's Witness group, and they're, preaching TikTok, Doom's Clock is on his way. They're trying to convert people, this, that, and the other. He runs into a young lady who seems to take an interest in him. They go into the Looking Glass or looking type of puzzle, type of carnival place. And you think that the girl has interest in him, but she doesn't. She takes his clothes off and bam, the show just blows my mind week to week. So, a couple weeks ago, they introduced Laurie from the comics. And this is by far one of the biggest kind of big comic book moments they brought to the big screen. And this is the first time that we've seen the comic squid incident in New York take place in live action. And you might say, wait, what about the Zack Snyder version? No, that didn't. If you saw the film, the director's cut, it was an animated version. This is the first live action of the incident. So we see the squid. We don't see the squid being teleported, but we see like the aftermath of the squid. And I'm going to show you guys the picture here, as you can see on the screen now. They bring it to the small screen. And when I say the small screen, they bring it to television. This show has just been impressing the hell out of me from a visual standpoint. Obviously the story and the characters, but they recreate that big moment from the comics. And Damon Lindelof has said many times, this is his remix. This is obviously a sequel from the comics, but this is his version of the story, and they remix it. And I love that they brought that back from the comics. And, again, it's visually impressive, and it's just incredible to see the visual so far. So the episode, within the first 5 minutes, my mind was literally blown from seeing that, that incident from the squid coming down, and Adrienne's plan, the Dr. Manhattan's plan, and we see the squid in live action. So incredible. So we see that we get Wade's backstory. We see his day-to-day life. He works as a market researcher, as they show us commercials of people going back to New York. We see kids eating cereal. We see perfume, things of that nature. We see his day-to-day life, but then we kind of transition from that, and we see Laurie is now the head of the department. We kind of know that from last episode, but we see her talking to the cops of Tulsa and letting them know we need to find the 7th Cavalry, we need to look for this church, and so on and so forth. And we see Laurie interacting with Wade, and I just love those scenes, right? Whenever Laurie's on the screen, she is so great. I'm loving her so far in this season, and we see her interact with Wade, and I just love that she keeps calling him Mirror Guy. It's so hilarious to me personally. But she tells him, she's asking about his past, oh, you were there in the 80s, and, explains why you wear your mask to prevent the blast. And, he has all these precautionary things that he does. But she mentions to him, hey, what about those pills that Angela's asking you about? And, she reveals, I'm the FBI agent. We bug everything. She tells him she has a bug on his desk and asks about the pills. And we know how that plays out later in the episode. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just love that she calls him Mirror Man. It's hilarious to me. So going back to Wade, he goes home. We see his day-to-day life. He's continuing to get mail from his ex-wife, Cynthia Tillman. We see that he watches The Hooded Justice every night, at least that we assume that he watches it every night. He has a malfunction within his alarm system. We see him calling, and we see him sleeping in the mask. We just see that this guy is paranoid to the 10th degree and is just prepared for another squid invasion to take place. And we also get a nice little kind of callback to Rorschach in regards to him eating beans. And again, I just love all the connective tissues from this TV show to the comics. I'm loving everything, and it's just great. So he visits his ex, and again, this show is continuously bringing up the cloning. We see his wife works for this pet cloning facility, and I feel so bad for that one puppy that they just, does it look like it? No, it's a little small, and I assume they're killing these puppies. It's so sad because I love dogs. But we see she tells him that the pills that Angela's grandfather Will is using are nostalgia. They call them nostalgia because they bring back your memories, and that's going to play big into later in the episode. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I'm very interested to see Cynthia and her backstory, and her and Wade. They talk about a little bit about their 7 years of bad luck, this, that, and the other, and that Wade, even though his superpower is reading people, he doesn't have good luck of picking women, as she mentions to him. And I'm really interested to see if we learn more about Cynthia and more about this cloning situation that they got going on, because this isn't the first time we've seen clones within this series so far. So we see Wade. Again, this is a Looking Glass focus episode. We see that he goes to extra dimensional anxiety classes that he attends to for the 11-2 incident that happened in the 80s, which again alludes to the comics. We see him kind of talking about it and having this group, and then he meets this young lady who kind of catches his eye, and we see how that plays out. She's they kiss, and first off they talk, and he shows her superpower, and we all know this is a hoax later on, but I'm like, okay, Wade's getting a little love interest. But as things kind of play out, and one thing I must bring out, I love that the show does this. Again, they just bring in these cool little references and Easter eggs. So she mentions a movie directed by Steven Spielberg called The Pale Horse, which is a classic film in this alternate timeline, which obviously, if you guys know and follow films, they're talking about Schindler's List in the reality that we live in today, and how it parallels, the time that they're in, how they're paralleling this to, the Nazis and the Holocaust and all that. So I just love that little Easter egg they put in there. Really cool. But as we see with this young lady who's a radiologist, she works for the 7th Cavalry. We see that the lettuce falls out of the truck. Wade takes it upon himself to follow the truck, and we think he's calling in help, but we find out it was all a hoax. In another WTF moment, we find out a big reveal. Number one, the senator's in on it. Judd's been in on it. They set everything up for Wade. They even set up the radio. All of it was all a hoax. They're planning to do something different. They didn't allude to what they're doing. Wade says, you're going to drop another squid on Tulsa. And the senator says, no, we got bigger plans. We got to do something different, which again, I love those things that they're adding in new flavor to the show. The senator mentions to Wade that they want to do a quid pro quo. He wants Angela to get off their tail. If he doesn't, they're going to kill Angela and her family. So he's kind of stuck on a rock in a hard place. And I love that scene because Wade, all the things that he's been building up to has been a lie. He watches the video. He sees another recreation from the comics, and I love this. We see Adrienne from the 80s predicting the future, talking about Redford being the president, and the president has to go along with this hoax of creating fear and bringing humanity back together. Again, we get two huge moments from the comics, from the squid at the beginning of the episode, and when we go back to the comics where Adrienne is sending this message of how he's going to bring the world together. As we know from the comics, is from the creation of fear and how the society reacts to that. So speaking of Adrienne, we go back to his situation on this planet that we kind of found out last week, and he goes into space, and he goes on the planet. We see his experiments, or his test dummies, as we should call it, and he spills out the word "save me," which I am to assume that is we see that the camera's looking in on him. I assume that camera is probably to our villain from last week, the lady that we see that builds the Millennium Clock. I assume that's a message for her, for she can get someone over there to get him out. We see him get pulled back in by the game warden. He's under arrest, and we're going to see how that plays out. But I'm loving what we're getting with Adrienne so far. All that stuff is weird, but I'm loving it. So ending up wrapping this video up, recapping the episode, we see Looking Glass. We didn't get much of Angela, but Angela asks him, did you get more information about the pills? He tells her it's nostalgia, the memories. And, she spills the beans to him. And unfortunately, by her doing that, which I think it's ultimately saving her because he didn't want her to be killed by the 7th Cavalry. So he decides to have Angela spill the beans, which alludes to Laurie coming in, arresting her. And she takes all of the pills, which I'm excited to see what that leads to next week with her taking those pills. We're going to probably get some more backstory on Will's story and all that stuff from the preview that we got from tonight. So, oh man, I am just loving what I'm getting with this show so far. This is my favorite episode. It was clever. It was an origin story for Looking Glass. Again, we find out why he wears the Looking Glass. At the very end of the episode, we see the 7th Cavalry go into his house, guns locked and loaded. He doesn't wear his hat at the end, so he's now changing his point of view of the whole situation because he now knows the truth. I'm loving it. We know now that, again, Angela is going to find out more about her grandfather next week and find out more about that. We're obviously got a ticking time bomb with the Millennium Clock going on. We can't forget about Luke, man. We got to find out the identity of that character, which I'm excited for. But again, I love this episode and how to focus on Looking Glass, but at the same time, it was able to make the narrative move forward for the rest of the season. So, oh boy, I want to know what you all are thinking, your theories, your thoughts, your comments, your likes, your dislikes in this episode. Let me know in the comments. Of course, give this video a thumb up. Share this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And again, make sure you keep an eye out for all of our reviews. I got a review coming for tomorrow for Parasite. Finally saw that movie. Did a bunch of reviews over the weekend for The Mandalorian. See on Apple TV Plus. The Morning Show. I did some reviews for Netflix, Klaus, and Earthquake Birds. Check out those videos. And we got a lot of videos coming this week, so keep an eye out for that. So again, thank you all for watching this review of Watchmen. Of course, I'll be back next week talking about the latest episode, and I can't wait. But thank you all for watching this review, and we'll see you in the next video.